guys, so today's video is gonna be about Swedish racism. As a black person, what should you expect when it comes to racism in Sweden? The most common kind of racism that you're going to experience or see in Sweden, it's organized form of racism. Yeah, if you haven't watched my previous videos, you might not really understand what I'm getting into. Yeah, so it's nice that if you really want to get a whole picture, really understand what I'm talking about, you should watch my previous video, because I might cut a little bit of kind of examples from my previous video. I believe that Sweden has more of an organized form of racism is because personally, I've gotten a chance to meet the Swedes in their system. Like, if a lot of you guys don't know, I do have an autistic brother, which has given me a chance to meet the Swedes in their system. Like, I get a chance a lot to attend a lot of meetings with Swedish doctors, psychologists, case workers, lawyers, judges, which when you attend meetings with those people, you get to learn a lot about the system because those people work in the system. The thing is that the thing with organized form of racism is that it's the system that is after you. And most of the time, the migrants are so scared. They don't want to get into a fight with the system. They don't want to get into trouble with the system. So we try not to talk about it or not to make it into a big deal. You understand? Because that's the thing about organized form of racism. It's always a system that's after the person, after the people. So a lot of people are like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to have any problems with the Swedish system or anything. That's why a lot of times people out there feel like, oh, racism is not something that's very common in Sweden. No, it's very common. But the type of racism makes it less common because everyone is so scared to stand up or voice out their opinion about how they feel. Myself personally, the first time I kind of experienced organized form of racism was when I was sitting like in a meeting with this Swedish woman. It was about like my brother's case, and then she wrote something that was like racial or so, and I was like, you know, you can't write that down, you understand? And then she was like, because she said this thing in her language, like she said it in Swedish, and I was like a little bit confused because I'm gonna say what she said to me in Swedish, and this is what she said to me in Swedish. She was like, Janet, om du vill ta mig till mina system, men ingenting kommer hända till mig för jag är svensk och du är inte svensk. And if I translate that in English, this is what that means. It means, Janet, if you like, take me to my system. Nothing is going to happen to me because I'm Swedish and you're not Swedish. And I think that was the first time I officially attended a meeting in Sweden. And that was my first time I officially attended my brother's meeting. And I was a little bit confused because I was like, I met a lot of racial people prior to that incident. And I think that the one thing I noticed when I meet a lot of racial people prior to that incident is that they tend to be very defensive. And if you're a black person or a person of color, one thing you know in today's society that if you meet someone that is racial, this is what they always say, oh, I cannot be a racial person because you know what? I have black friends. Oh, my neighbor is black. So you cannot say I'm a racial kind of a person, right? But with her, she did not defend herself. And then she was less remorseful about what she wrote down. And which I found a little bit ridiculous because I was like, I wasn't expecting that from her. Because when we sat in the meeting, I felt like she was going to defend herself or be a little bit remorseful, try to explain to myself and my mom why she wrote the things she wrote down. But instead, she was just more of like, I don't care, take me to my system. But I bet you one thing, nothing's going to happen to me because I'm Swedish, you're not Swedish. And I remember walking out of that room, and I was a little bit confused because I was like, wait, I was trying to wrap my head around everything. And then as I walked out of that room, I don't know if I really saw it like a big deal. I just ignored it. But as time went on and I attended more meetings in the Swedish system, I met a lot more Swedish people that worked in the Swedish system, I realized something. That phrase was something that I used a lot. Because I remember a lot of times when I sit in the meetings, with my brother's meetings, with myself, my mom, and the people that are involved in his case, every time we sit down and we're talking, they always bring up that phrase, like if they say something racial or they write something racial, and then myself and my mom, we try to draw their attention to it and be like, you know, you can't say this thing or you can't write this thing down. This is like you being racial right now. And they'll be like, Janet, Becky, if you're not satisfied, take us to our court system. But I bet you one thing, nothing's gonna happen to us because we're Swedish and you're not Swedish. And most of the time, I remember myself and my mom always tell them this, how we're going to appeal the document. Because in Sweden, when you get a decision, you have like 3 weeks to appeal that decision if you're not really satisfied with whatever that person has written down. And we always tell them how we want to appeal the decision. And they'll be like, yeah, you can appeal it. But like I said, even if you appeal that decision to our court system, nothing is going to happen because we are Swedish and you not. And I was like, okay, I didn't expect that. And if you haven't watched my previous video, you see that I talk a lot about the whole incident with my family and the Swedish people. And if you look, a lot of times the people that I mention in those videos are people that are working in the Swedish system. These are not just regular people that I met on the streets in Sweden or in the train station and the bus stations in Sweden, and they got into a misunderstanding. No, these are people that are working under the Swedish system. They are being paid monthly by the Swedish system. And if you look at the way they handle a lot of things, you see that they don't even care. They are more of like, we don't care. We don't care what we do to you. It's not a big deal. We don't see it as it's a top priority for us being racial. It's more of like, we don't care. If you're not satisfied, take us up there, but nothing is going to happen. And the thing I've noticed in Sweden is that instead we don't pluck them out of the system. Instead, we empower them more to do what they do. And that's why the Swedes, they use this phrase all the time that, Janet, if you're not satisfied with my decision, you have 3 weeks to appeal it in my court system. But I bet you one thing, even if you appeal it in my court system, nothing's going to happen to me because I'm Swedish and you're not Swedish. And I was like, no. And that's the thing, because the people, the Swedes themselves, they know it, that at the end of the day, nothing is going to happen, because you have to know one thing when it comes to the court system in Sweden or the judicial system in Sweden. Let me tell you how it works. Often when we put a case in the courts in Sweden, it's more of like where you're from and your skin color. That's how you get justice, and who is suing you. Yeah, we're not really into the thing of like, oh, you getting justice or you deserve. No, it's more of like, oh, this person and this person, what do you think? Do you think we should give this person justice, or do you think we should twist the case around? If you don't even know, you can watch one of my previous videos where I talk a lot about my brother being taken to the courts in Sweden. Like, if you watch that video, you see how the whole drama played itself out. And I was like really shocked, because that was the first time I officially attended a meeting in the Swedish courts. But prior to that incident, a lot of people had told me that in Sweden, when it comes to their court system, they're very racial, and they spend their time looking more of where you're from and your skin color. And when I officially attended my first ever court hearing in Sweden that I had to do with my autistic brother, and I sat there and I watched how the people made the whole case look like my brother was a criminal in Sweden, despite the fact that they were fully aware. This is because they were like police officers that sued my brother in the Swedish courts. So one of them were like sitting there, and one of them said this. He was like, I'm so traumatized since the incident with my brother, my autistic brother. And this one he said was like, I've worked in the Swedish police force for 10 years. And since the incident with this autistic boy, I've been so traumatized. I can't go to work. I can't do anything. And I sat in the courtroom, and all I could think of at that moment was, wait a minute. You're going to tell me that you've been a police for 10 years, 10 good years. You've never seen a rapist. You've never seen a serial killer. You've never seen a pedophile. Those people don't traumatize you. But what traumatizes you is an autistic boy that is having a meltdown. And the judge basically said nothing. They just pretended like they wrote that part like it did not happen. And they judge my brother as a criminal. I was like, you cannot judge the guy as a criminal because a police said he's traumatized about an autistic boy having a meltdown. Like, as a police for 10 years, you have seen worse cases than that case. Like, you cannot tell me that anyone that's a police cannot tell me that you've been a police for 10 years and you've never seen a case that is worse than seeing an autistic person having a meltdown. With organized form of racism, people, the system is the one fighting the people, yeah. Yeah, the system is the one fighting the people, yeah. And because the system is the one fighting the people, it makes it really, really difficult for the people to talk. Yeah, we can go back into history. We can go back and read our histories, and we see that a lot of times when a country is practicing organized form of racism, a lot of people tend to get into themselves. They tend to be they don't come out. They just get into their shells. They don't like to talk. They don't want to do anything because the system has unlimited powers. That's the difference between individual form of racism, because the thing with individual form of racism is that individual has unlimited powers, because you can take that individual to the system and be like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of you doing this thing. But when it's the system doing it, when do you take the system to? When you get to experience racism in Sweden, it's when you meet the people in their system. But when you meet them out of their system, they look very nice, very humble, very innocent. But when you get to meet them in their system, I bet you're going to see a lot of things that you're going to be like, wow, I did not see that coming. A chance of getting into the Swedish system, what I've seen, the kind of racism I've seen in Sweden, yeah. I'm not saying that individual form of racism is not in Sweden, yeah. They have the individual form of racism, but what I'm saying is that we have more of the organized form and less of the individual form, yeah.